Welcome and bienvenidos to Cultural Capacity, a podcast sponsored by Educator Aid Incorporated, where our team is committed to supporting individuals and organizations on their journey of self-aware leadership, emotional wellness, and development of effective cross-cultural communications. Let's get ready to explore the following topics together by biting into them with little pieces that go really deep to examine ourselves. Topics like bias, culture, cultural psychology, cultural neuroscience, diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial equity. Our episodes are all 10 minutes or less and intended to serve as introspective tools for you as the individual leader or the teams that you're leading. Be sure to check out the links in the podcast description where you can sign up for our free quarterly subscription, Better Community, as well as tap in and submit your questions via the voice message button. Let's get ready to learn together. Hey, you all. Welcome to this episode of the Cultural Capacity Podcast. I'm your host, Justine Gonzalez, founder and CEO at Educator Aid Incorporated. Thanks for hopping in with us. So, we are going to dive right into this episode's question. What is a microaggression? So, little fact, and I'll give you a little bit of context here. First of all, I have committed microaggressions. I've observed them, I've named them, I've identified them. It's probably something because our linguistic and socialization structures in humanity are ever evolving. It is probably something that we have all encountered at all those levels that I just named and owned for myself, meaning we've probably asserted microaggressions and been unaware of it. We have probably asserted microaggressions. You have likely asserted microaggressions and perhaps been aware of it, or someone made you aware of it so you could correct it, or you have witnessed or observed them happening. And finally, perhaps they've been made towards you. That's another one that I've experienced. So any person actually could experience a microaggression because they're not limited to just one human construct, such as ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, or class. The thing with microaggressions is that often there's an overlap between how how it plays out, and also contextually if it is accepted or not. And that is what makes it so tricky because it's very much a social and language based term, microaggression. It is wrapped up in an understanding of the context, the people involved, and what's occurring, right? And often, again, I think more times than not for myself and also just observance of others and being in this space of DEI and culture work, it's often people don't know. People often, more times than not, they don't know that perhaps what they are saying out loud is something that is offensive to a specific people group. Um, so I want to just put that out there because I know it can be very, very difficult to talk about things that are related to race, situations related to ethnicity, and just in general. I know people see this word microaggression, they get very nervous, they get very turned off, and it's almost like a wall because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for people to say, "Hey, you shouldn't have said that. That was really." Like actually like a microaggression. And so there's a distinct difference because when you think about slurs, a slur is often very overt, right? And it would be like, for example, if you see footage of like I don't know, the different white supremacy groups is what comes to mind. KKK, neo-Nazi groups, like it's overt. You know what they're about, you know what they stand for. They're using racial slurs, in particular, racial slurs. There are other forms of slurs, but they're using racial slurs very overtly. Microaggressions are called just that because often it's really encapsulated in prejudice. Prejudice, the definition, the simple definition of prejudice is a prejudgment. And so because based on your each of our own subconscious, our own cultural context, how we were raised as children, how we've experienced adulthood, etc., all those things, right? It all stacks up, and if you perhaps haven't examined something or you've had limited experiences with a particular group or setting or just things in life, that's why often it's important to know how to identify and also address when you either experience a microaggression asserted towards you, you witness it with other people, or you yourself perhaps find yourself going, wait, was that a microaggression? And you're trying to understand and become more aware of your language. So little background. So historical again. Dr. Chester Pierce, he is a prominent African American. He was trained at Harvard as a psychiatrist, and he was actually the first that even gave a definition to covert, right? So remember, racial slurs, our example, that's overt. Microaggressions are often covert, with a C, covert. He was the first to really coin that phrase, and they are known, his definition is that they are subtle, stunning, often automatic and nonverbal exchanges which are quote unquote put downs of blacks by offenders. And so that's his definition back in 1978. So then we look at the evolution of this, and I am actually going to link her text because I love it so much. It actually just came out, I believe, in 2021, but it's called Our Biosocial Brains, The Cultural Neuroscience of Bias, Power, and Injustice. It's by Dr. Michelle K. Lewis, who I love, and it is a go-to text for me. So I will link it in the show notes in case you want to order it for yourself, but I am going to reference the different pages that I'm reading from. So full circle, right? That's when the term was first created. And Dr. Chester Pierce creates this as a psychiatrist trained at Harvard because of observing over and over. This was his research body. He's also an African American man, and was very prominent, right? So here we fast forward to Dr. Lewis's book, and this is in chapter 5 on page 66 of her text. Again, if you want to order it below, I'll link it. Um, and she says on this page, although the focus of Pierce's, so this is Dr. Chester Pierce, work was on interpersonal relationships between Black and white Americans in the United States, he acknowledged that the offensive mechanisms, which he called microaggressions, could arise in many other interpersonal interactions. Therefore, arguably, they can also be used during communications of men regarding women, among persons who identify as heterosexual regarding LGBTQ persons, and during communications of cisgender persons regarding transgender persons. What also comes to mind is differently abled persons and abled persons, right? So I think, again, because this is ever evolving, and I will continue to say this, because this is what this podcast is all about. It's about building our capacity with those things that we desire to become more aware of. So again, if we put out a statement, we say, I want to work towards racial equity in my company, my organization, my school district, right? Whatever that is, and whatever that goal is, we have to also know what that commitment looks like on the back end, what the engagement looks like, what the accountability looks like, and not flippantly say, yeah, I'll listen to a podcast episode, I'll read a book, and I'm going to understand all of my biases, for example, right? Like, that's not going to happen. And so that is why it's so important to be really gentle and to understand that this is an ongoing journey in any personal development and awareness work. So we have Dr. Lewis's definition in her text our biosocial brains that I just read to you. And so now I'm going to give you a real time example, right? Because that's the question we're answering here. What are microaggressions? I gave you two different definitions, how they both have evolved. And now I'm going to dive in, and I've chosen an example from Dr. Lewis's book. And it is also a part of my identity. I am part Puerto Rican, and so part of my identity is Latina. So on page 65 of her text, she highlights actually, which it's more of a semantic type of linguistic phenomenon, which is she describes it as a descriptive type statement, which it's not associated with like a heightened emotional state, right? So I'm not knowingly, because some microaggressions are done knowingly, right? And they're very direct, they're very overt in some respects because they have to do with somebody's appearance, for example. That could be how it comes through. But when she talks about a descriptive type statement, I'll read it in a moment here. It doesn't necessarily induce an emotional state, like a heightened emotional state, but it uses words that are descriptive. And then I'll break down how she broke it apart. So the statement is this: many Latinos live in this neighborhood. I would not want to live in this neighborhood. Okay. So there's nothing being said directly. Did you catch that? It's just a descriptive type statement. Nobody said Latinos are fill in the blank with a prejudice or racist, ethnic type slur, right? Nobody said that. It reads, many Latinos live in this neighborhood. I would not want to live in this neighborhood. So, again, this is direct quote from her text, page 65. The word Latinos, as used in the statement, is descriptive, even though the underlying meaning of the sentence suggests ethnic prejudice. It suggests ethnic prejudice. Therefore, the speaker could be accused of uttering a prejudicial remark, but they cannot be accused of uttering a slur. Okay. So, again, that semantic is really important. It didn't say it didn't say something specific about the ethnic group or the racial makeup of the Latinos, right? So this is why it can be very tricky when people start to say, oh, well, I don't know, did I make it a micro? And so here's rule of thumb. If I feel, we've all had those moments where we feel ourselves kind of get a little hot, or we feel that little bubbling in our stomach and we're like, uh-oh, I don't think I should have said that. So when you feel that, there's three quick steps I'm going to give you to take. Um, Give me a moment here. I had it written down. So the first step would just be become aware. So the very fact that you're already responding to what's bubbling up within you of going, uh-oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that way, or maybe I shouldn't have said it, or I didn't know I said that, but I didn't know, right? You could have any number of things happening inside you, but the first step is becoming aware and then identifying and actually naming for yourself, perhaps with another person, um, the harmful behavior. But initially, you do need to name it and identify it appropriately. And you need to explore why you said it. Okay. And so then the next thing that I would encourage you to do is to accept that you made this statement or impression or impersonation, whatever, right? Whatever's happening with the microaggression, you engaged in this behavior and you need to accept that. Okay. So, number one, become aware of it. Number two, you accept that you did this. And then the third step is to either work with the person who you caused harm to, if that's not possible, right? If it was just something that happened in passing, it's not a person you know and you didn't address it, then you can also just step back, you pivot, and you use it as a learning springboard to not make that mistake again. And you focus on, when I'm engaging in language, when I'm talking with others, how do I have an inclusive approach that actually considers the humanity of others? Because what slurs, racial and otherwise, as well as microaggressions, what they ultimately uncover is some form of superiority, some form of thinking that you're better than someone for some reason, and ultimately dehumanizing that person. If a person is humanized, it means you see them as equal. If you are dehumanizing somebody, there's an air of, whether it comes from class, like your pay grade, your class could be titles at work. It could be race, it could be gender, it could be sexual orientation, it could be religious preferences. But there's an air of superiority underneath microaggressions, even though they are usually covert. And often the person who asserts the microaggression is not even aware that they did or said something or engaged in a behavior that was hurtful and harmful. So, very, very full circle here with also some background context. Please reach out if you have questions, and know that we have a longer workshop on this very topic that was given to all of those who register for our monthly free learning workshops, which you can use for just your individual growth or with your teams. You can play it for a team. It's kind of like plug and play professional learning with a focused topic. Please feel free to look at the show notes, send us a text, and we will send you the replay, because this is obviously airing after we've already sent that to registrants for the July 1st workshop. So feel free to just send us a text. The details are in the show notes. And I will continue to look forward to learning with you all. Let's continue to get compassionately curious together, and take care. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today and tuning in to this episode of the Cultural Capacity Podcast. We're glad you're here. If you found value in this episode, be sure to share out with your social networks. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review on Apple. You know, all the things. Finally, don't forget to take advantage of our free quarterly subscription that is in our podcast description. The link is right there. It's called Better Community, and we would love to have you join us there too. Until next time, take care.